Okay, we're here with Mom and Dad Packard here at their farm. It's December 13th, 2018, and this is Chad. I'm up here visiting with them, and we're talking about a variety of things, including we just finished a video with Dad and about cousins and such. And so now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about Mom, and or she's going to talk about her cousins and parents and life in Virginia, and we'll just kind of go from there. So, Mom, you want to kind of?
Well, as he said, I was born and raised in a little town called, we called it Hoag's Store or Hoag's Chapel. And the reason it was called that is that the Hoags were kind of very wealthy. They were farmers and they were kind of wealthy. And so they named this little town Hoag's Store or Hoag's Chapel because there was a church there also. And plus there was a store there. So they called it Hoag's Store or Hoag's Chapel.
I never knew that.
Well, and then also my mom and dad were involved in a little town called Mountain Lake, Virginia, and there was a post office there. And the reason why they were involved with that is that there was a huge rock hotel that was built on top of the mountain, and there was this huge big lake right on top of the mountain by this hotel. And my mom and my dad and his dad, Leonard Haven Meredith, they were workers there. They were they took care of like the painting and the upkeep of the hotel. And then my grandfather Meredith was we called him Poppy Meredith. That was his name. And anyway, he was a caddy at a big 9-hole golf course on top of the mountain, just out from the big hotel. Well, he was a caddy there. And then even my brother Beverly and Olin, they became caddies when they were like 15 and, you know, teenagers. And so they were caddies there. And so anyway, that's why Mountain Lake plays an important part of our life, is because my three oldest brothers and sisters, or the three older children, were both born at Mountain Lake and lived there right by the hotel, and then they moved later down to what's called Hoag's Store, or Pembroke. Or Pembroke is the place that's right next to it where I went to school for 12 years. Well, anyway, we had 13 in our family. We had 13. We had...
Where do you fit in that?
I'm number 8. I'm number 8. But we had five brothers. We had 5 brothers. Olin, Teddy, Beverly, Homer Irving, and David Wallace. And David Wallace and Homer Irving both died when they were just very young, they were toddlers, 6 months old to a year. They both died.
You know what from?
Well, they always said to me, or told us, one was infantile paralysis and one was just diarrhea. But they died, you know, in the hospital when they were really sick. But anyway, they both died in the hospital. So.
And their names again?
Homer Irving and David Wallace.
Okay.
Meredith.
Yeah.
And Homer is my dad, and that's why he was called Homer. And then David Wallace was my oldest sister's first husband's name. Oh. So that's why. So
she was already married?
She was.
Before the birth?
Yes, right.
They both were born after her.
Okay. After me. Well, before, honey. No, right after me.
Yeah, okay.
That line.
Okay.
So anyway, we had.
Okay, so how does the order go again?
Okay.
Do the order.
All right.
Like Chad, Todd, Daphne.
Okay, all right. There's first Olin Richard, And Richard is my dad's middle name, so that's how he was. Teddy Theron. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go again. I'm sorry. I'm getting mixed up. Dorothy. No. Olin Richard. Dorothy Virginia. Claudine. Teddy Theron. Sylvia Sidney. Sylvia is deceased. Then Anna Sue, Edna Powell, Talmadge Rayburn, which is me, and then it's Beverly C. S-E-A-Y, Beverly C.
That's a son.
It's a boy.
S-E-A-Y. Okay.
And then it is let's see.
Two babies.
The two babies after that.
And those were again?
Homer Irving and David Wallace.
Okay.
Yes, all right. And then it is I forgot. Demetria Irene. And Irene was from a sweetheart of my brother Beverly, Olin. And then it is Coretta Guer, G-U-E-E-R, not queer, but queer,
okay.
After the movie star. And then it is, Coretta was the baby.
Okay.
Coretta was the baby.
So,
the family.
I have a question. I think most people would recognize that those are very unique names. And did that come from your mother's side, mother and her side, or was that your dad and his way of thinking, or was it that's just what they wanted to do, or?
Well, those basically are kind of Southern old-timey names. Southern names.
Okay.
Like, for instance, mine being Talmadge, everybody thinks it's because of James E. Talmadge in the church, but it really wasn't, because Talmadge is a Southern name.
Okay.
There was a Governor Talmadge, and there was a Talmadge law and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know. So anyway, but those were kind of regular names. And like, for instance, my name, Talmadge Rayburn, sounds like a boy's name, which it probably is. But anyway, I was named after Rayburn Miller, who was the president of the Mountain Lake Hotel.
Okay.
And plus, honey, I was just told not too long ago that he actually saved my mom and dad's life because they were starving. They just didn't have anything to eat. And he took them kind of under their wing and helped them get through that period of time. And then Beverly, Bob always, mentions Beverly, that's a boy's name, a girl's name, but it really isn't. There's Beverlys and Shirleys and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that's our family. Now, all of our family basically are members of the church. My mom and dad met, I'm sure, through the church, because there was a very small little branch upon Mountain Lake Road. And that's where my grandpa and grandmother and my dad and all of them traveled up over the mountain, that walked to go to church.
She has a great uncle named Joseph Smith, and his wife was Emma. And no relationship at all.
Not Emma Hale, but Emma something.
Right, Emma.
Yeah.
Yes,
and they're the first ones that joined the church in that little valley there. And that's a great uncle. He joined the church at the turn of the century, 1900.
Have you had a chance or taken an opportunity to try to figure out who the missionaries were that baptized them? Or
yes.
I'm sure the church knows. It's got to have a record.
Yes, sure.
Then you could look into who the missionaries were at the time.
Well, Matthew Cowley, who was one of the general authorities, he used to be the president of the Southern States,
Mission.
Mission, and in that area. And I'm sure that that's who got us, involved in the church, and the aunt and uncle and stuff like that that joined the church. I'm sure he did that.
They weren't the only ones that joined the church of the family, but because right after they were baptized, there were others Smiths and Merediths. Her mother
That
is
also
a
joined the
Smith.
church.
Her mother is a Smith,
Yeah.
and her father is a Meredith, and a lot of them joined the church back in the turn of the century in 1900. They were the backbone of the branch and eventually the ward and the stake. There's a stake now right there in Pembroke.
Okay.
With a stake center.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, and we, you know, in the olden days, you know, people didn't leave. They stayed right where they were born, and I mean, they just didn't leave. They worked, you know, right where they were born, and so my family have been in Virginia forever. All of them.
Yeah, in fact, in doing genealogy, which we're doing a lot of, if you look at, this is just a very, very minor part of the genealogy that we have done in this book.
The old way.
The old way, yeah.
The old way.
I remember those growing up.
Yeah.
Now we have right around 29,000 names that we have in the family history, and doing, you know,
Doing
literally
work.
hundreds and hundreds of temple ordinances for them, and it's ending up that, you know, we're related to everybody in Pembroke.
Yeah.
Everybody in Giles County is related to each other because of this very fact.
Well, it's interesting. A side note: all these names. Just yesterday, our daughter Camber, her oldest daughter Micaiah, went to the Dallas Temple.
Oh, did she?
And with their youth group, and she had found, I think it was 5 names on the Meredith side
Is that right?
And they're all female names to do, and
Is that
so
right?
she just did those last night, just last night. So,
Wonderful. That's
so anyway,
good.
go ahead.
Okay. All right. Now, like I said, everybody basically has lived there as far as my family is concerned. Now, back to Daddy's, my daddy, Homer. We always called him Daddy, not Father or Pa, or, you know, it was always Daddy.
Now, did your mother have a pet name for him as well? Did she call him Daddy?
Yes, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we called Mom Mommy.
Mm-hmm.
It was always Mom or Mommy, and not Mother, which is fine. And you know, we didn't think of anything else to, you know, call them other than that. Well, anyway. On my, I was never, ever, I mean, we as a family, you know, did our thing together because there were so many of us.
You lived on the mountain.
Yes.
And your dad worked at the time for Mountain Lake Resort, whatever it was.
Yes, right.
And was a caretaker of the hotel and such. And
yeah, their house and property is about 7 miles up the mountain
from the main road,
out of Hoke Store or Pembroke.
Okay.
And then it's 2 more miles before you get to the top of the mountain, which is Mountain Lake, where they were.
Okay.
Where the highway is and everything like that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
And so, did you? You lived on some acreage there.
Yes, we had like 40 acres, and we paid like $2,000 for it. My dad did, and
for the whole 40.
For the whole 40, $2,000, and it is still there. The property is still there.
Owns all 40.
On all 40 is still there, but we only own. I do now only 2 acres plus the house, because my sister. Anna Sue and her husband and their 2 children built a home there, or had a home brought in. And then my brother Beverly also has a home built there. And then Jagger has a home that's built there.
They're all right next to each other.
Right, and I think I've seen that, but you still have, who has the rest of the acreage? I mean,
everybody has sold it. Like, for instance,
well, some of it was sold to
Creta. I'll tell you.
Okay.
Creta and Sylvia sold their property. Theirs was mostly up towards Mountain Lake on the road, and so they sold it back to Mountain Lake. So they own that.
Okay.
And so my sister Sue basically owns 16 acres of that. We have 2 acres. Beverly has like 4 acres, and he sold 2 to
Jagger.
So all of the property is owned by basically the family still.
Okay.
All the others, we bought them out, and they.
And your 2 acres is the homestead and surrounding it.
The yards.
The yards, not excluding the barn. The barn belongs to Sue.
Okay.
Well, anyway, so we lived there the whole time I was there until I was 18, and and then we got married. Well, anyway, mom had 13 children in her family, and Mom was a Smith. Her mother was Susanna Songer, and then she Mom when Grandma got married, she became a Smith. She married Joseph Cephas Smith.
Okay.
And so Mom was Geraldine Smith.
Had lots of brothers and sisters.
She had 13.
Where was she in that mix, more or less?
2 or 4. Here.
Oh, look, you go ahead and talk.
Anyway, they had 13 in their family, and lots of girls, and a few. There was only 3 boys. I think there's 3 boys.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I never did really I never was really around them very much at all, because they all lived like 15, 20 miles away, and my mother never drove a car in her entire life. And so my oldest sister, Dorothy, would always come and take us to, where
places
we needed to go. Well, anyway, on this farm where my grandmother lived, Grandma Smith lived, she planted 13 pear trees and gave them to each one of their children.
Oh, okay.
Of these 13 children. And so Mom had a tree that was Dine's tree. That's what my grandmother called my mother, was Dine, because her name was Geraldine.
Okay,
but she
Geraldine.
always called her Dine.
Okay.
That was her tree. And it's interesting on that, did you know on the church record, they have Dine, Geraldine?
Really?
In the records. It's actually written separate.
Interesting.
Geraldine. Girldine. That's how they spelled it in the church records.
Wow.
So anyway, we always visited with her, and but we never really did visit with her own children because they weren't there. We just visit Grandma and Grandpa. Grandpa was just a good old man, very good. Well, anyway, the only person that I knew in my mother's family, her sisters and brothers, was Anne Spazoff was her name. She was married, and her name was Susanna Spazoff. And then, because I knew her because she was closer, and she was kind of ritzy.
Okay.
And then the other one was, that I only met once, was Nancy, and she was in the hospital and died of cancer. So she's the only one really that those 2. And then Aunt Nora, we called her not Aunt Nora, she moved to Utah.
Salt Lake City.
To Salt Lake City. And so we knew her, but that's those 3 are basically...
Well, partly because she did a lot of genealogy research.
So she wanted to be back
and
there.
I copied it all off took off from there.
But anyway, then just about 3 years ago, we went to Salt Lake and looked up 2 other sisters of my mom's, and that was Evangeline, and the other one was Moss. Sister, her married name was Moss. I can't remember her first name.
Okay.
But anyway, they were still living in Utah with their husbands and stuff, and so we met them for the first time. So
just a couple years ago.
Just a couple of years ago. And they were both of them were in kind of bad health. Yeah. And in fact, I just...
Older than you all?
Oh, definitely. Okay. Definitely older than we. And then, honey, I just heard within the last year, also 2 years, that Evangeline had died. She just died, and we
And she was in Utah as well.
She was in Utah as well. And then when we lived in Utah, well, it's interesting that we really didn't ever go and see Aunt Nora. I don't know why we didn't. I just don't know why we didn't. When we were there, we had no kids, and first married and stuff. But anyway, those are the only 4 or 5 that I ever met of Mom's. All of her, brothers and
siblings
sisters,
and things.
siblings.
And your father, your dad?
Now,
Daddy?
My daddy. He had, let's see, 4 in the family. Lucy. Let's see. In Daddy's family was Uncle Raymond and Aunt Lucy, and then Aunt Lake and Aunt Lena.
I think it's 5. Yeah.
So with him, it's 5.
And with him, it's 5. Okay. And they all lived kind of...
Where was he in the mix?
He was number 2. He was number 2.
Okay.
Right? Daddy was number 2. And anyway, they all kind of lived, very close. And 2 of Lena and Lake, they both died before I never did ever meet them at all. They both died. And it sounds like a lot of foul play.
Really?
On one of them,
really?
Especially. Just cruelty. Just very cruel. Well, anyway, and then Raymond, he had like 6 children. And so we were closer to them than we were Lucy's or Lake's.
Okay.
And we went to school with them. And so that's how we got
and
to know them as
was
cousins.
everybody that was there in the area, were they farmers? You said somebody had a store?
Yeah.
But for the most part, what did they do back there to survive?
They all kind of worked locally on, farming, and then most of them went to what's called the Selco Heights. Selco Celanese Corporation.
Oh.
Big as workers, really, not in yes,
factory type of work.
Right. They made bobbins and they did cigarette filters and material and stuff like that. But most everybody in that area works for the Celanese Corporation, usually as just laborers, no professional behind the desk.
Not executives.
Not executives at all.
And the plant is actually...
still there?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Big.
Yes. It's really
west
big.
of
Harrisburg. Near Narrows.
Yeah.
It's a little town.
It's on the main road that goes to Bluefield, West Virginia.
But that's where my father finally went after that, got through with Mountain Lake and stuff like that, needed more money and more kids, and so they needed more money. So he went to there as a laborer, and he worked there for 25 years.
Wow.
And then retired.
At the Celanese.
And never missed a day. And then Olin, he went there and worked there. And then my brother Beverly, he worked there for probably 15, 20 years as a painter.
He's retired now?
He's retired now.
Okay.
But almost everybody in that area, that was the main
source of income.
Yes, at Celanese. And Dad, he was just a laborer.
Your mother passed away at a fairly early age?
She was only 59 when she died.
That's very young, by the way.
I know, very young, very, very young.
I'm 59 in 3 months.
And then my dad died when he was like 75. I think he was 75 when he died.
Okay.
And he never did remarry, and which we're excited about that. But anyway.
Okay.
I shouldn't have said that.
No. That's awesome. That's wonderful.
All right.